This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
This is Red Pilled America. Has communism ever worked? It's a question most think they can answer. Conservatives point to Cuba, Venezuela, and the Soviet Union to say it's a failed system, incompatible with the American way of life.
The communist system is the opposite of the American system, and the communist system has never worked.
We are not communal social creatures, as postulated by either Rousseau or Marx. In fact, we're far more self-interested and sinful in our disposition, and that is why communism has never worked.
Everywhere it's been tried, socialism has failed for more than 2,000 years.
Progressives counter that their brand of democratic socialism is not communism, and that it is working in parts of the world.
And I think we should look to countries like Denmark, like Sweden, and Norway, and learn from what they have accomplished for their working people.
And that message has gained traction in America.
I am a democratic socialist.
Zohran Mamdani won the New York mayoral race.
Last week, all three congressional candidates endorsed by New York City Mayor and Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani won their primaries.
Part of a wave of Democratic Socialists winning in deep blue pockets of the country.
The word socialist doesn't have the same sting as it once did.
So with this continuing debate, we aim to answer the question, has communism ever worked? I'm Patrick Corelchi.
And I'm Adriana Cortez.
And we promise only one thing, the truth. Welcome to Red Pilled America. Has communism ever worked? The answer isn't as clear-cut as you may think. First, both sides of the aisle can't even agree on definitions. Communism, Marxism, socialism, democratic socialism, social democracy. Conservatives say each of these systems are effectively one and the same. Progressives claim that each are totally different, and there's some truth in both of their claims. When most people think of communism, they think about governments. But before we can understand governments, we first must understand communities. And what's perhaps been most surprising in our research is that there is one fascinating community that clearly illuminates the answer to this question. But prominent figures on both sides of the debate almost completely ignores them. And perhaps that's because this flourishing community doesn't fit comfortably into either side's story. So has communism ever worked? To find the answer, we're going to tell the story of this fascinating community. Because whether you call it communism or democratic socialism or social democracy, this community proves that it may work, but only under very specific conditions.
It was June 2019 when a group of Montana farmers gathered to discuss how to stop a giant in their industry. They argued that for years, a farming giant was unfairly exploiting a government loophole and taking their ill-gotten gains to purchase expensive equipment, slash their prices, and outbid the little guy when buying massive tracts of land.
All the advantages they get, they can afford to pay exorbitant prices for an acre of land where the normal farmer out here cannot compete.
One estimate placed their land grab at more than 6 million acres, approaching the size of the entire state of New Jersey. The group was one of the most successful farming operations in North America. But the shocking thing is, no one owns the operation, no one owns the land or machinery, no one pockets the profits, and that's because the farming group doesn't believe in individual property ownership. Yet, they've been thriving for centuries. The farming giant is known as the Hutterites, and the Montana small farmers believed the government needed to step in to stop them.
That's what we're here for, to change laws.
Today, roughly 50,000 Hutterites live in Canada, North and South Dakota, Montana, Minnesota, and Washington state. In Montana, they produce over 90% of the hogs raised in the state and nearly 100% of the entire egg supply. In South Dakota, they control an estimated 60% of the pork market. They also have major market share in the dairy and poultry industries. And they control land, millions of acres of land. Where did they come from? Well, you have to go back nearly half a millennium to hear their origin story. And some Hutterites would argue that their communal way of life has been around since the time of Christ.
In the early 1500s, Europe was coming apart. The Protestant Reformation had shattered the religious unity of Western Europe. New religious movements sprang up across the continent, each convinced it had rediscovered the true teachings of Christianity. One of those movements was the Anabaptists. Unlike Catholics and most Protestants, the Anabaptists believed that baptism should be reserved for adults who consciously choose to follow Christ. To Catholic rulers, they were heretics. To Protestant rulers, they were dangerous radicals. Many were imprisoned or executed. It was into this world that an Austrian hat maker named Jacob Hutter arrived. He thought Christians were never meant to pursue wealth as individuals. Instead, he believed the earliest Christians had practiced a radical communal way of life. This model came primarily from the Book of Acts.
All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had.
To Jacob Hutter and his followers, these weren't merely descriptions of the early church. They were instructions. The community should own the land, the livestock, the tools, and the businesses. Individuals should contribute according to their abilities, and the colony should provide for everyone's needs. They formed organized communities to live out their deeply held belief. They came to be known as the Hutterites.
Act the second is really where our life comes in. And keeping all things common. That's how it started, and that's the way we want to keep it.
The goal wasn't equality through government. It was obedience to God, and their communal life extended far beyond economics. They believed Christians should live together as one extended family. They ate meals together, worked together, and worshipped together. Living side by side meant you couldn't simply walk away from your neighbor. You had to make peace, as a Hutterite explains.
But on this earth, you have to love thy neighbor. And how can you show love if you don't live together? Do things for one another. If one is sick, take care of him. If you can't work, let somebody else do it. In the colony, you see all the members. And if you have some misunderstanding amongst yourself, well, you can't go on living and hating him. You have to get things right.
At the center of everything was a simple belief. Work was worship. Every person contributed, served, and depended on everyone else.
We are based on the scripture where it says, in all things that you do, you eat, you drink, you work, or anything of the parts, praise God.
But their way of life came at a cost. Because they insisted on living separately from state control, governments repeatedly drove them from their homes. In 1536, Jacob Hutter himself was arrested by Austrian authorities, tortured, and burned alive, but his followers survived.
For the next 3 centuries, they migrated across Central Europe, eventually settling in Russia that promised exemption from military service. And for nearly a century, the Hutterites flourished. Then in 1871, the Russian government terminated the military exemptions. Faced with the prospect of conscription, the Hutterites made a decision that they made many times before. They left. Beginning in 1874, approximately 1,200 Hutterites immigrated to the United States. Most settled in the Dakota Territory, but only about 400 continued the traditional communal way of life. The rest took up individual farms and over time largely assimilated. The communal Hutterites established colonies, the first being the Bonham Colony. Founded near the Missouri River in what is now South Dakota, it became the foundation of nearly every Hutterite colony in North America today. The system was simple, but demanding. A colony could not grow indefinitely. Once it reached roughly 30 families, or around 150 people, it began preparing to establish a daughter colony. The mother colony would purchase new land, divide assets and skills, and eventually send part of its population to begin again. They did this because they realized that once a colony became too large, people no longer knew everyone well. Decision-making became harder. Conflict became more difficult to resolve. The community began to weaken once it got above 150 people, so they split. This was one of the secrets of their survival. The Hutterites did not build one giant commune. They replicated small ones again and again. And by doing so, they accidentally stumbled upon a principle known as the Dunbar number.
In the early 1990s, British anthropologist Robin Dunbar studied primates, their brains, and the average group size among them. From his research, he predicted that humans have a cognitive limit on the number of people with whom we can maintain stable social relationships. His estimate? On average, about 150 people. By stable relationship, Dunbar didn't mean simply recognizing someone's face. He meant you knew who they were, how you were related to them, their reputations. You understood your social obligations to them, and they knew you. The Dunbar number is the maximum number of meaningful social relationships humans can comfortably maintain. Many successful human organizations throughout history seem to converge around this size. Long before Robin Dunbar proposed his theory, the Hutterites had already settled on remarkably similar colony sizes. Once a colony reached about 150 people, they didn't expand further, they divided. One colony became two. In the late 1800s, the United States gave them the land and freedom to formalize and perfect this practice. But America would not remain their refuge for long.
When World War I erupted, all but one Hutterite colony left the U.S. for Canada to avoid conscription. But after World War II, colonies gradually returned to the United States, especially to Montana, South and North Dakota, Minnesota, and Washington State. Montana became one of the major centers of Hutterite life. They grew at a slow but steady pace. Outsiders are almost never allowed membership into the colony. Hutterites marry within their sect. Marriages must be approved by both the church and parents, and divorces are forbidden. So the Hutterite colony only grows through procreation, and they can track their lineage back to the original colonies. Over the decades that followed their return to America, Hutterite colonies began gobbling up land, and their system slowly started to apply pressure on small farmers.
Our system, I think, is ahead of the individual system because we don't have to pay labor costs. If we, in a community life where you're sharing, and you'd have to pay a labor, this kind of thing, you couldn't afford to build up a place like this.
By 2019, some Montana small farmers called for a boycott of Hutterite goods, but it didn't stick. The Hutterites had built a reputation of being trustworthy neighbors.
In proportion to the general population, they are more honest than most people we deal with.
What exactly makes the Hutterites work? Well, it's a community of trust. Lineages can be traced back for almost half a millennium. It's also voluntary. Members can leave at any time. Each Hutterite has the same deeply held beliefs. Every colony is small, no more than 150 people. If a colony population gets close to this threshold, it splits, and their entire system is centered around families. This Christian communal way of life has worked for the Hutterites for almost 500 years. And they aren't the only community that's found success living under a socialist-style system. Founded in 1920, the Bruderhof live in the UK, Germany, Australia, Paraguay, and the United States. Like the Hutterites, they are an Anabaptist community that live communally. Everything belongs to the community, and their colonies include between 100 and 300 people. When they reach the larger end of that range, they form another colony. And there are other communal societies that have had a stable, relatively long-standing existence, but all are much smaller and shorter-lived than Jacob Hutter's followers. The Hutterites are an extraordinary case study. They've shown that communal living has been successful on a small scale. One man should have found them fascinating, the godfather of communism, Karl Marx. Yet, despite writing thousands of pages on communism, he never mentioned them, not once. Why is that? Well, a man named Robert Owen may help illuminate that answer. The Hutterites proved that communal living could be successful in very small communities. Robert wanted to see if this could be scaled to the size of a town. But unlike the Hutterites, Robert didn't inherit a communal society. He set out to build one with strangers.
Traditional dog food is dead food, which is why it could sit on a shelf for years because it's lifeless. But Rough Greens brings the nutrition back. Adriana and I use Rough Greens to make sure our furry babies get the live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, digestive enzymes, and omega oils they need in their diets. And our dogs have never been better. Our Bull Mastiff Willow used to be tired and had joint problems, and our English Bulldog Pablo had skin issues. But after adding Rough Greens to their diets, their problems disappeared. Ask yourself, how do you think your health would be if you just ate dead food? Rough Greens promotes longevity by addressing common nutritional deficiencies found in processed dog food. And there's no need to change your dog's food. Rough Greens isn't a dog food. It's a live nutritional supplement you add to your dog's food. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens. It's that easy. Don't change your dog's food, just add Rough Greens. Rough Greens is offering a free Jumpstart trial bag. You just cover shipping. Use discount code RPA to claim your free Jumpstart trial bag at roughgreens.com. That's RUFFgreens.com. Promo code RPA. So don't change your dog's food. Just add Rough Greens and watch the health benefits come alive. Welcome back to Red Pilled America. By the early 1800s, Robert Owen was one of England's most celebrated industrialists. At his cotton mills in New Lanark, Scotland, he had done something many believed impossible. His businesses remained profitable while spending heavily on its workers. He shortened workers' hours and improved workers' housing. He opened schools for children, cleaned up the filthy mill town, and despite spending more on his workers than his competitors, his business remained remarkably profitable. To Owen, this proves something profound. People weren't born good or bad. Character was formed by environment. In his view, change the environment and you change the person. If that was true for a factory, why not an entire town? So to test his theory in 1825, Owen purchased a small town on the banks of the Wabash River in Indiana. He wasn't trying to seize power. He genuinely believed he had discovered a better way for ordinary people to live. The town he purchased was ready-made. It already had homes, workshops, barns, mills, farmland, and even schools. Owen renamed it New Harmony. Then he issued an invitation to the world. Teachers, scientists, craftsmen, artists, farmers, laborers. If you believed a better society could be built through cooperation rather than competition, you were welcome. His vision was radical for its time. Instead of competing with one another, strangers would work together, sharing both labor and prosperity. For a moment, it seemed possible. Hundreds of people arrived from across America and Europe. Newspapers called it one of the greatest social experiments ever attempted. Some believed they were witnessing the birth of a new civilization, but very quickly cracks appeared. The community had no shared faith, no common traditions, and no common understanding of authority. Many of the newcomers were idealists, some were scholars, some were skilled craftsmen. Others had simply heard that land, food, and opportunity awaited them in Indiana. Not everyone came prepared to work. Arguments broke out over leadership. Committees multiplied, meetings stretched for hours. Governments were created, dissolved, and created again. Some members labored from sunrise to sunset. Others contributed little, yet expected the same share of the community's resources. Resentment began to grow. The greatest challenge, however, wasn't agriculture or money or even leadership. It was that nearly 900 strangers had arrived carrying 900 different ideas about what the perfect society should look like. Robert Owen believed that a new environment would create a new kind of person. Instead, he discovered that changing a person's surroundings was far easier than changing human nature. By 1827, less than 3 years after Owen purchased the town, the communal experiment had effectively collapsed. The dream of New Harmony was over. What did the Hutterites figure out that New Harmony couldn't? Ultimately, Owen showed just how difficult it was to build a communal society the size of a town overnight. But what if a nation took a different path? What if it first became prosperous and only then began sharing more of its wealth?
If you ask Americans for an example of socialism that worked, many point northeast to the social democracy Sweden. But Sweden began with a very different system. For most of its history, Sweden was an ordinary capitalist country. People owned private property, businesses competed in open markets, entrepreneurs built companies, workers earned wages. By the early 20th century, Sweden had become one of Europe's fastest-growing industrial economies. Then came the Great Depression. Like much of the world, Sweden was hit hard. Unemployment rose, businesses failed, families struggled. Many Swedes began asking, where did capitalism go wrong? One group said that they had the answer: Sweden's Socialist Democratic Party. They argued that capitalism shouldn't be abolished, but it needed guardrails. Their promise: the markets would create wealth, but they'd help spread its benefits. The message resonated with the Swedish people, and in 1932, the Social Democratic Party came to power. Over the next several decades, Sweden built what would become one of the world's most generous welfare states. The taxes were high, but the services were broad. By the end of the 1990s, on almost every measure, the results were impressive. Sweden remained wealthy, poverty fell, life expectancy increased, educational attainment rose. The country became known around the world as proof that markets and an expansive welfare state could coexist. So, had Sweden finally solved the problem Robert Owen could not? Well, not exactly, because underneath their success was something easy to overlook.
For much of the 20th century, Sweden was one of the most culturally cohesive societies on earth. Its people spoke the same language, shared the same traditions, belonged overwhelmingly to the same Lutheran religious heritage, and were ethnically homogeneous. They trusted one another. For decades, their system worked remarkably well. Sweden looked like it had solved the puzzle. But then came its biggest test. Beginning in the late 20th century and accelerating over 2 decades, Sweden experienced levels of immigration unlike anything in its modern history. The country became far more culturally diverse than it had been for most of its history. But Sweden's welfare state had been built during a time of extraordinary cultural cohesion. Now the country had people with different languages, different traditions, and far more varied beliefs. Since, Sweden has experienced rising fiscal costs, immigration challenges, declining social trust, and growing political polarization. Pressures that have tested public confidence in the model. But one thing is clear. The Swedish experiment wasn't simply about capitalism or socialism. It was also about something we'd seen before. Community, trust, shared expectations, a shared culture, and a shared heritage. The same questions that confronted a Hutterite colony of 150 people were now confronting a nation of millions. And Sweden wasn't the only Nordic country feeling these types of pressures. Denmark, Norway, Finland had all followed a similar path and later encountered the same strains on their social welfare state. These Nordic countries that democratic socialists typically highlight began with markets, then added more government. China would attempt the opposite.
In 1949, after decades of civil war, foreign invasion, rural poverty, and political collapse, Mao Zedong proclaimed the People's Republic of China. Private industry was nationalized, agriculture was collectivized, markets gave way to central planning. The state would decide what was produced, where it was produced, and how it would be distributed. But the experiment came at a terrible cost. The Chinese Communist Party attempted to force hundreds of millions of farmers into vast people's communes and rapidly transform China into an industrial power. Instead, agriculture production collapsed. Famine followed. Tens of millions died. Then came China's Cultural Revolution, a decade of political chaos that disrupted education, government, and economic life. By the time Mao died in 1976, the Communist Party still controlled China, but the Red Dragon remained desperately poor. 2 years later, the country's new leader, Deng Xiaoping, made a surprising decision. He would not surrender political control, but he would begin surrendering economic control. Farm families were allowed to keep and sell more of what they were producing. Private businesses began to appear. Foreign companies were invited in. Special economic zones were created. Prices increasingly reflected supply and demand. China remained a one-party communist state, but its economy began operating less like communism. The result transformed the world. Hundreds of millions escaped extreme poverty. Factories multiplied. Cities expanded. China became one of the largest economies on Earth. Ironically, China's greatest economic success began only after it loosened central planning. So, is China proof that communism has worked?
Licorice, licorice, where art thou, licorice? If you listen to Red Pilled America, you know that I love licorice, and there is no licorice in America better than the delicious gourmet licorice made by the Licorice Guy. The Licorice Guy is simply the best. What sets their licorice apart is its flavor and freshness. They have a great selection of flavors to choose from, like red, blue raspberry, black, and green apple, just to name a few. The freshness of the Licorice Guy is unlike anything you've ever tasted in licorice before. Seriously, if you haven't tried licorice from the Licorice Guy yet, then you ain't living life right. Trust me, you will not regret it. It's time to dump that store-bought licorice that's so hard it'll break your teeth, and get yourself the soft, fresh stuff from the Licorice Guy. What I also love about the Licorice Guy is that it's an American family-owned business. It's made right here in the beautiful US of A. We are big proponents of buying American and supporting American workers. Right now, Red Pilled America listeners get 15% off when they enter RPA15 at checkout. Visit licoriceguy.com and enter RPA15 at checkout. That's licoriceguy.com. They ship daily. Treat yourself and those you love and taste the difference.
Do you want to hear Red Pilled America stories ad-free? Then become a Backstage subscriber. Just log on to redpilledamerica.com and click Join in the top menu. Join today and help us save America one story at a time.
Welcome back to Red Pilled America.
So, is China proof that communism has worked? The answer is no. Karl Marx would likely have looked at modern China or Sweden and proclaimed, "This is not communism." In Marx's communist system, there is no room for a stock market, billionaires, privately owned corporations, private accumulation of capital, wage labor, inheritance, entrepreneurs, or large wealth inequity. The goal of Marx's communism is to eliminate all of those. Yet every single one is found in modern China, Sweden, and the other Nordic countries. Marx once described communism with the famous phrase,
"From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs."
Sound familiar? That's exactly how the Hutterites have described their lives for nearly 5 centuries.
Do things for one another. If one is sick, take care of them. If you can't work, let somebody else do it.
Hutterites live in a classless communal culture. Individuals don't own property. There is no wage labor. They literally live by Karl Marx's highest tenet. One of the longest-lasting communal societies in history had already existed for hundreds of years before Karl Marx published the Communist Manifesto, yet Marx never mentioned them. Why is that? Perhaps it's because the Hutterites directly undermined his communist project. Marxists or socialists or communists aren't concerned with transitioning 150 people into their ideal system. It's concerned with coercing 150 million people. The Hutterites and every other successful communal living community contradicts that goal. They show that communal living may work at a scale of a few hundred, but at any larger scale, it tends to collapse. Perhaps that helps explain why the Hutterites rarely appear in Marxist arguments. Their success proves communal ownership is possible, but the scale is severely limited. However, it's not only the left ignoring the Hutterites. The anti-communist right does it too. And perhaps that's because they complicate their narrative as well.
We're now at a fork in the road where if we continue where the Democratic Party wants to take us, and that is into socialism, socialism is godless.
So has communism ever worked? After looking at 5 centuries of experiments, one thing becomes clear. The communal living of communism has worked, but only under very specific conditions. Communal living has been tried many times throughout history, and over those many experiments, the same qualities keep emerging. Communal living works when participation is voluntary, the community is kept small, members share deep religious or ideological beliefs, and perhaps most importantly, trust must be high. If all of these qualities aren't present, history has shown that communal living fails, and the moment you try to scale it to the size of a town, city, or nation, it eventually collapses. And this underscores the issue with those pushing socialism in America. Karl Marx saw socialism as the bridge to communism. Eventually, workers would become conscious of their exploitation, overthrow the capitalist class, and seize control. That period is what Marx envisioned as socialism. He believed that socialism would succeed so completely that economic classes would disappear and coercive government would gradually wither away, leaving his final tenet, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. Ironically, the people who came closest to living Karl Marx's most famous principle weren't Marxists at all. They were 16th century Christians. But history is unambiguous. Every communal living system collapses at any scale larger than a few hundred people. So when activists openly call for the socialist reconstruction of America, you should take them seriously and ask whether they truly understand the historical limits of the system they want to build.
The new socialist government will take possession of all the existing capitalist banks and create one People's Development Bank. The Electoral College would be abolished.
Red Pilled America is an iHeartRadio original podcast. It's owned and produced by Patrick Corelchi and me, Adriana Cortez, for Inform Ventures. To listen to our entire archive of episodes ad-free, visit redpilledamerica.com and click Join in the top menu. Thanks for listening.